For the Climate Action Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Ross Clendenin. I do marketing and communications here for RCPA and SCTA. And we'll be getting started and going down the agenda here. Since we do have a number of new folks, I think it'd be good to go around, go down the list and do some brief introductions. And let's see. We'll start. I'll just kind of start with the folks I see. Can we start with Beverly, and then you can pick the next person?
Yes, I'm Beverly Shore, and I am the representative from Petaluma.
And we have Stephanie.
Sorry. Hi, all. My name is Stephanie Turk. I'm so pleased to join you today from Healdsburg. First meeting.
Welcome. And Judith.
Hi, welcome, Stephanie. I am Judith Newton. I am from Cotati.
And Jane Elias.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Jane Elias, I'm representing Cloverdale.
And Zeno.
Yeah, Zeno's fighting in Sebastopol.
Kevin Conway.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Conway, representing Santa Rosa.
And Carrie.
Carrie Fugit, she, her, Linda, Supervisor Hopkins.
And David Leland.
David Leland, City of Sonoma.
And Julie.
I'm Julie Kawahara, independent consultant, also representing West County under Supervisor Hopkins.
Thank you. We have Tyra.
Hi, I'm Tyra Benoit from Healdsburg, and I'm so happy Stephanie is joining us on the Climate Action Advisory Committee.
And then Steve Bertelbaugh.
Yes, Steve Bertelbaugh with Santa Rosa and with the Transportation and Land Use Coalition.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Shirley Johnson.
Morning, everybody. Shirley Johnson, representing Rohnert Park.
And Christopher Peck. I believe you're still muted there. Yeah.
How come my space bar tactic didn't work? Sorry about that. Christopher Peck from Windsor.
And Ben Peters.
Ben Peters, Observer.
Excellent. And Woody Hastings. Hopefully Woody is there. And moving through staff, we have David Ripperton.
Morning, everyone. David Ripperton with Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
And Tanya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Narath. I'm the Director of Climate Programs for the RCPA.
BC.
Hello, everyone. This is BC Caps with RCPA, Climate Change Specialist here.
And Shauna Gauze.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shauna Gauze with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. So to get started, Drew, do we have any pre-submitted public comments?
No, we do not receive any pre-submitted public comments on items not on the agenda.
Perfect. So I believe the first order of business is the approval of the April 8th meeting minutes, which were attached to the packet that was sent out. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those meeting minutes? Do we have any public comment on that?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We had a second there. Excellent, thank you. April 8th meeting minutes are approved. Next item we have today is the SCTA 2022 funding program presentation. And I believe, is that you doing that, Shauna?
I am, thank you. And I'm gonna team up with David, so I'll start the first part and then I'll hand it over. Drew, and you're gonna run the slideshow for me.
I haven't, am I sharing the right screen?
Looks like you've got the notes screen.
It's in presenter mode right now.
In presenter mode. It's interesting being on this side of the screen. Okay, how's that?
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Drew. So as Ross mentioned, I'm here to talk about the SCTA funding program and our draft staff recommendations and to get any input that the committee might have for us on this funding program. Next slide, Drew. So the SCTA started this process about a year ago with a call for the top 5 priority transportation projects from each jurisdiction. In response to that call, SCTA received 65 applications. The total requested funds in those applications was more than $220 million for $62.5 million in available funding. Also, given the timing of some of the funding sources, SCTA needed to program some projects early with State Transportation Improvement Program and Local Partnership Program funding. That money went to the 4 listed projects here, and they are a Complete Streets project, a bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing of Highway 101 in Santa Rosa, a bicycle path gap closure project in West County, and an electric bus purchase to replace aging diesel fleet buses. Next slide, Drew. In addition to the STIP and LPP, State Transportation Improvement Program and Local Partnership Program programming, that was done early, I wanted to review some of the most recent programming that was done by SCTA. And that was the Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program, which was offered by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission to spend some of the last One Bay Area grant Cycle 2 funds. 6 jurisdictions were selected in Sonoma County to receive that funding. The funds were intended for projects that were ready to go and quickly deliverable. Those projects included a pedestrian safety and pavement rehab job in Cotati, a bike share pilot program in Healdsburg, bicycle and pedestrian safety job in Rohnert Park, a pedestrian and bike safety project in Sebastopol, a roadbed rehabilitation and of the transit mall in Santa Rosa, and an additional portion of the smart multi-use path in Petaluma. Whew, there we go. Thank you. All right, I'm ready for the next slide, please, Drew.
I do apologize for that. My hand slipped.
It's all right. So additionally, the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program was seeking applications earlier than when SCTA anticipated proposing projects for the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 funds. So SCTA partnered with the transit agencies to submit several of the projects that had been submitted for funding for the funding program as a Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program grant application, totaling more than $24 million. It was actually $24.9 million. The awards were announced yesterday, and our grant application was successfully funded for the full amount. So with that background, thank you, Drew. That brings us to the process that SCTA went through to evaluate the remaining projects that had been submitted for the SCTA funding program in Cycle 1. That's Cycle 1 of our funding program. The One Bay Area Grant has gone through several cycles, so I was referring to those Cycle 2, Cycle 3, but this is the first cycle of the SCTA funding program. That being said, all of the projects were evaluated by staff and received a consensus score using criteria that were recommended by both the technical and citizens advisory committees and approved by the SCTA board. The evaluation criteria address established goals of Plan Bay Area, the comprehensive transportation plan, the Sonoma climate mobilization strategy, and Go Sonoma. Specifically, they evaluate benefits to the equity priority communities, potential for a project to promote and encourage transportation mode shift, the project's ability to address public safety, the project sponsor's efforts on community engagement specific to the project, and the project's ability to reduce emissions, among others. Next slide, please, Drew. So in this effort, staff's initial approach was to rank each project in order of its raw score. We then used a cutoff score of 95. Using that method, the total funding requested of projects that fell into that category was $101.2 million, which was nearly double the available funding. So you can find those projects listed in table 2 of your agenda packet. Next slide, Drew. The second scenario, staff looked where staff again looked at selected projects with a score of 95 and above, but excluded all the transit projects since we were anticipating that the TRCIP, Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program grant award as a working premise. We assumed that we would get that. So then we eliminated all of the transit projects from that list. This approach, however, disproportionately benefits some of the jurisdictions over others and would have difficulty meeting the SCTA and regional goals and performance targets. One of the projects on the list had already gone out to bid, so that was also removed. You can see those projects listed in table 2 of your agenda packet. Next slide, please. The third scenario selected the highest scoring project from each jurisdiction, but this approach would also disproportionately favor some jurisdictions over others, and it would have been challenging to program given the levels of funding of certain funding sources that we had available. And that scenario is shown in table 4 of the agenda packet. Next slide, Drew. And that brings us to the actual staff recommendation. And here's where I will turn it over to David.
Yeah, thanks, Shauna. So the staff recommendation, go back to the previous slide, Drew, is based on that third scenario, as Shauna mentioned, but we massaged that a little bit to adjust for geographic equity to ensure that all areas of the county are going to benefit from this funding. Looking at the eligibility for certain funding sources, only some of the projects are eligible, for example, Roanoke Park mitigation fees, and also balancing our regional goals and performance measures and making sure that, for example, we're still addressing our pavement needs throughout the county and at the same time managing our complete streets needs and other projects throughout the county. So given the funding already awarded by the state yesterday for the Transit Interstate Rail Capital Program, when combined with the proposed program and project shown in table 5, we feel this is a balanced multimodal investment approach that will benefit the entire region. And I should note also, we're assuming that the Smart Windsor extension and the Petaluma North Station are going to be funded through other sources. And the Petaluma North Station was funded by that TRCIP grant, as we mentioned. And on the next slide, we have a summary showing the staff recommendation. This includes projects in all the jurisdictions of the county, including projects in Cloverdale, Cotati, Healdsburg, Petaluma, Roanoke Park, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, Sonoma, Sonoma County, Windsor, a transit expansion project for Petaluma Transit, and a smart pathway project. And some of these projects are recommended for partial funding, and other ones are fully funded. But we're recommending a total of $53.2 million worth of projects. And we'll go over to the next slide and turn back over to Shauna.
Thank you, David. So with that, staff is requesting feedback from the Climate Action Advisory Committee on the draft recommendations. And Drew, if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. To review the schedule as it stands today, we are presenting the draft funding program to all of our committees, both SCTA and RCPA. So it's going to the Technical Advisory Committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee. It's actually already been to those 2 committees. It's coming to you. It's been also presented to the Transit Technical Advisory Committee. It will be going also this month to the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And then on Monday, it will be presented to the SCTA board. In August, the final draft funding program recommendations will go out to the committees. So our intention is to do public engagement and engagement with all of the community, with all the committees, get all of that feedback. And then in addition to when we present it to the board on Monday, we're just presenting the draft so that they can have the first view of it. And any feedback that we get from the committees will also be represented there. And so in August, once we've collected a lot of that information, then we will come back and finalize our recommendations. And then in September, we will take the final draft program recommendations to the SCTA board. And then once the board has approved that final draft list, then at the end of September, we will submit the One Bay Area, the projects that we feel are eligible for the One Bay Area grant to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And MTC staff will take from October until December to determine what their recommendations are, because the One Bay Area grant is a competitive program. So we can submit a number of projects up to a target amount, but we are not guaranteed any funding. So we are submitting the projects. That's why we went through this process, to score the projects, to try to make sure that we're providing the best and most competitive projects, and also that will address our regional goals. So we're submitting those. October to December is when MTC will evaluate them. Their staff recommendations will come out in the end of December. And then once we have those, then those will go to the commission, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. The commission will actually hear those recommendations in January and approve that program. And then once we know what the final projects are, SCTA will get a list of what has been funded with OBAG. And if we need to make any adjustments based on what we had submitted versus what actually got funded, we will try to do that and have a final program of projects in February of 2023. I hope that was all clear, please. Next slide, Drew. That brings me to the end. That concludes my presentation, and staff are ready to answer any questions the committee members might have about this program. And shall I take them, or Ross, would you like to?
Oh, I'm happy to. Go ahead, Shirley.
Thank you. I'm so happy to see the pedestrian bridge funded with this grant. That makes me very, very happy. We really need that safe pedestrian route across the 101 from this side over to from the east side over to the west side, or the west side over the east side. So that's what it was like $3 million or something. And so where will the rest of the money come from? Is it like a $20 million project or something like that?
It is, and City of Santa Rosa has a number of sources. They have an ATP grant, which is the Active Transportation Program, and they have local funding, and they are using some STIP funding. So it's an amalgamation, but it's mostly from ATP.
And for the pedestrian overcrossing in Roanoke Park, we're funding the environmental and design phases. And we're trying to get the project in a position where it can compete well for future state and federal funds, such as through the Active Transportation Program, which is similar to the approach that was done for the Santa Rosa pedestrian overcrossing. So we think it'll be very competitive in the future.
Thank you, David. I thought we were talking about Santa Rosa, but we were talking about Roanoke Park. My apologies.
Next, we have Beverly Shore.
Yes, I think you guys have done an amazing job just trying to weed through all these different options and making sure that everybody gets a little something. My question is there the possibility of having like a backup plan in case that transit money doesn't come through? Is there any flexibility that we could substitute projects based on, I don't know, first and last mile or whatever it is that we wanted to base it on in case that didn't become available?
So the TIRCIP grant, the $25 million was awarded yesterday. So we do know that we are getting that fund. Up until that point, we didn't know. So we did have a contingency plan, but we won't need to use it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Up next, we have Zeno.
Yeah, I had a question about the network integration project. So I have two questions. Is this just integrating the services of the bus and smart, or does it also include some attention to integrate it with first and last mile, like active transportation, like biking too, and that kind of thing? And then the other question is, so I noticed that there's State Bill 917 that went to appropriation in Sacramento. It's called Seamless Transit Transformation Act. And that's similar to, I think, the goal of this project. And I just wondered whether there is funding coming out of that bill, if it passes, that could be used for this purpose here in the country.
Yeah, so on the transit integration, this is building on some previous work that we've been working on for the last 3 years with Sonoma County Transit, Petaluma Transit, and Santa Rosa City Bus to have a more seamless experience for riders and try to integrate branding and marketing and transfers. So building towards those goals that are in SB 917. I believe there's no funding associated with that bill at this point. It's really kind of trying to get the Bay Area to work closely together, and we're already ahead on that with our local efforts here. The other efforts that can be done as part of that transit integration work are coordinating with SMART and also looking at a study of the downtown transit center in Santa Rosa to try to make that facility more seamless for riders and accommodate other transit operators, including Mendocino Transit and Amtrak buses as well.
So maybe I missed your answer. So the first question was about integrating it with first and last mile.
And we may be looking at that, but it depends on how much budget we have available. We are closely working right now with SMART on integrating a bike share and a scooter share system throughout the county that should be going operational pretty soon, I believe.
Thank you all. Drew, do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comment was received on this item before the meeting.
All right. Moving on. Next item is the
Ross.
Yeah.
Julie actually just raised her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie.
That's okay. Sorry, I was kind of late to the game there. I was deliberating my comment or question. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that went into this as well. I realize how hard it is to give away a big chunk of money, especially when the ask or the response is bigger than what is available. So the criteria, that was my main focus when I sort of scanned these documents. And I just want to give thanks for some of the criteria, particularly the equity consideration in terms of historically marginalized neighborhoods and populations and communities. One of my questions though was the eligible project type, and you had it looks like 4 different categories. Just curious how, if there's a breakout of like the recommended awards and like what percentage is going into the various areas. Of course, I'm kind of most roads are really important. Infrastructure is really important, but I'm also like really focused on climate conservation and resilience. So I was just kind of curious if there was a percentage of award being broken out into those categories. If that's reported somewhere in the report, I didn't see it.
I don't think we've done it yet. I absolutely see us doing it, but because this was draft, I don't think that we've developed that yet. But we can certainly put it together and have it for the when we make our final draft recommendation in September, or to the committees in August. We can make sure that that's available.
Great, good, great work. It's a huge yeoman's lift. So thank you for all that.
And Zeno.
Yeah, I had another question. Can you explain a little bit more about how the issue of connectivity plays in the ranking, in the sense of if you have a project that connects to unconnected, that are already existing infrastructure in town. And the reason I'm asking is here in Sebastopol, you ranked higher some small stretch of road that I'm not sure how people thought about that project in terms of where it goes to. It seems a bit a road to nowhere, or you have to go back into the residential area. So that's kind of how connectivity and adding to an existing infrastructure of projects has played in the ranking.
Well, there was certainly connectivity was looked at as part of the ranking, but we did try to view the project overall. So we ranked it not in a vacuum, but in relation to all of these different factors that had to be weighed. So I think I'd like to hand it over to David if he has more to add about this, but I don't have much more than that.
Yeah, and I should note that the project in Sebastopol has been broken into multiple phases, and there was a previous phase that was funded through the second cycle of the One Bay Area grants, and this is a continuation of that project. Bodega Avenue provides key connectivity between the city of Sebastopol and Bodega Bay and other communities such as Occidental. So it's definitely not a road to nowhere, and it's definitely not a facility that is underutilized. It is a main thoroughfare for travelers wishing to walk, bike, and take transit west of Sebastopol.
Well, that part was not funded, right? That was not proposed for funding. It's just this very small part between Nelson Way and the street up at the cemetery. So I wonder, is that other part? Is that maybe comes up next year, or what's the timeline for that?
So we were not recommending that second section closer to the county line, as you mentioned. The city and the county have partnered on another grant application through the active transportation program to try to get that work done, along with additional bicycle improvements and pedestrian improvements on Regal Avenue and Mill Station Road. And we should find out if the state will fund that project by this fall as well.
And next up, I see Steve Bertlebaum's hand.
Yes, I'm very impressed. Again, every time I see the way that the staff is able to figure out what the color of money is and apply it to various projects, it's a huge and very complicated process. The question I have is, how does SB1 restrict our ability to fund active transportation projects because of the categories that it establishes? And specifically, can the money that's targeted for freeways be applied to crossings that link neighborhoods that have been separated by limited access roads?
Yeah, so I can answer that. So for Senate Bill 1, there's only a limited amount of funding in this proposed funding program through the local partnership program that's being actually coming from SB 1. So there are no real restrictions on what types of projects that the local partnership program can fund through Senate Bill 1. There are other funding sources through Senate Bill 1 that are more restricted towards maintenance, or in some cases through trade corridor improvements and through looking at congested corridors such as the 101 corridor. But all those programs generally also allow funding for improvements that benefit communities and mitigate for past harms, such as being cut off by Highway 101. And so those projects are all eligible under the Strategic Congested Corridor Program through SB 1, local partnership program, and the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program.
Good, thank you.
Next we have Carrie.
I will keep this quick. I also want to echo the gratitude and appreciation. It was a really thorough process and really appreciate all the considerations and different criteria. Overall, I think it looks great. And the one thing that Julie's question sparked for me actually, which I think would be really valuable in the long term, in addition to kind of a data point at the macro level of percentage of funding going towards public transportation versus other modes of transport. It would be really helpful, I think, to understand the large portfolio in terms of what percentage supported equity priority communities versus not. And I really, really appreciate that that was a criteria, and understand other criteria play into. But it would be nice to start being able to have a benchmark for funding of what percentage is going towards that, so we can track that over time.
Sure, I'll be happy to add that as part of the evaluation that we do for the final recommendation.
Thank you. And it was great. Thank you so much for all your work.
Right. Any last comments on the SCTA funding program? Seeing none, we will proceed to the next item, which is the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Call to Action update. I believe on the structure. And Tanya, were you going to speak on that?
Sure, I can do that. Let me share. I can get the right screen up here. Where is it? All right. Let's see. Are you all seeing a power or the slide?
The PDF?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that? Okay, great. So as I think we've shared with this committee in the past, our board has an ad hoc committee that's been looking at ways to fund the implementation of the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy. And as part of those conversations, the ad hoc has recognized the need to put some sort of structure in place to ensure that we have really strong community engagement and support in developing kind of what we're thinking of as an expenditure plan, which would, regardless of what the future funding measure looks like, or whether it's a sales tax or some other revenue measure, that we want to really engage the community in identifying what are the priorities that such a measure should fund, and how much of that measure would go into, say, bike ped investments versus electrifying buildings versus sequestration. So if you think about the different components of the mobilization strategy, really helping to get the community's input and active involvement in developing those more detailed implementation priorities. And so our ad hoc has put together this draft structure, which is still under discussion, and certainly welcome feedback from the Climate Action Advisory Committee on this. And it's going to be presented again to our board next week for additional feedback. But essentially what we're looking at putting together is a community-led steering committee that would have representation from the different program committees that you see shown here on the slide. So we're envisioning forming community-led committees around transportation, buildings, land and water, and then an environmental justice committee. And these committees would have representation from our board. We envision having representation from this committee, so would love to have liaisons or representatives who are interested in the different program areas. Of course, community members. And then these committees would be supported by our CPA staff, as well as what we're calling our government partners. So we envision a separate committee that would consist of representation from all of our member jurisdictions, as well as our partner agencies and tribal governments. And that committee would really be in place to provide technical support, analysis, et cetera, to these program committees as they're looking at, what are the priorities and recommendations that the community has around how we should be investing in climate work in the future. So all of this is gearing up for some type of measure going to the voters in 2024. And I know it may seem like a long time in advance, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into really crafting something that would be compelling and meet the community's needs. So that's the structure that's being proposed. And we hope to have this finalized and identify folks to take on the kind of lead roles in terms of the steering committee by sometime in August, so that we could start, kick off the steering committee and then get the program committees formed so they can start meeting and reviewing the mobilization strategy and identifying priorities. So I will pause there and ask Ross if there's anything else you would add to the committee structure.
Not particularly. I just think it's a good opportunity to make sure that we're coordinating the efforts and that it's, we're not competing, but we're kind of multiplying existing efforts within the county.
Yeah. And then related to this, I'll also share with the committee that we've recently become aware of a new funding source that would help us, if we were successful in our grant application, would help us support, for example, engagement with community-based organizations to really strengthen the outreach and engagement that we're doing. And that's a grant that's being funded through the Strategic Growth Council, and it's a new regional climate collaboratives program. And so we are in the process of reaching out to various community-based organizations in different parts of the county to explore with them their interest in partnering with the RCPA on this grant application. And pre-proposal is due on the 15th of July, with the final proposal due on October 7th. So that's something else that we're working on to help bring in funding just to support this effort that we know needs to take place over the next couple of years. So that's what I wanted to share on this. And Ross, I wonder if you could give the committee a brief update on the public engagement work that we're doing just around the call to action.
Yeah, we have begun doing some presentations to local committees, both government and CBO groups, and we've got some more scheduled next week. Basically just summarizing the Sonoma Climate Mobilization message and our efforts to gain support for future climate funding. So this is also where I invite everyone, if they do have a group that you think would be interested in getting a presentation on the Sonoma Climate Mobilization strategy, please reach out to Tanya or myself. And we would love to schedule that. We're really trying to customize these presentations a little bit. Just for those of you who saw our April kickoff presentation, we're trying to customize them depending on the kind of climate knowledge of the group. Pardon me. Whether it's basic intro to the climate impacts, or whether we're drilling in a little more. So in concert with that, we're working on producing a video, as well as a separate newsletter, leveraging our existing climate RCPA list, just to keep people updated with our efforts as we move forward into 2024. Those are the main items for this moment.
Great, thank you, Ross. So I think we can open it up to questions from the committee now. Kevin.
Yes, hi, thank you. I know in Santa Rosa a while back, there was some talk about, excuse me, funding for a microgrid, a community microgrid. And I'm just wondering, is that anywhere on the mobilization strategy, and has funding been looked into for that kind of an effort?
Funding has not been looked into for that, and that would be a great example of a community priority that could be, included in part of this expenditure plan, but no current activities that I'm aware of. Let's see, I think Ty, were you next?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate all the work that you did on the SCTA priorities, as many other people expressed. My question here relates to this issue of strategies versus plans. And what we hear a lot in my jurisdiction is, well, we're waiting for the county to come up with a plan. We've got the expectation that might happen. Is when we're searching for this funding and the implementation priorities that you were talking about, Tanya, are we looking at the creation of an actual countywide plan, or do we want to do this jurisdiction by jurisdiction? Because I really feel like I need to clarify that so that I can work more effectively with the city council in my jurisdiction. So is the ultimate implementation priority the creation of a countywide plan? We also met, a group of us independent of CAAC, but it's a countywide group, met with the new climate division, Anna Yip and Barbara, some of the people that are working for the county. And this came up in that meeting too. So any clarification you can offer, I would really appreciate it.
Sure. So I would say in the near term, we're certainly encouraging and supporting each of our jurisdictions in moving forward on climate priorities that they have identified. So for example, the city of Sebastopol is in the process of developing, and it will be the draft will go to their city council in a couple of weeks, a climate action framework that will guide the city's work around climate action in the years ahead. That framework has been developed in partnership with RCPA, so really designed to complement the Sonoma climate mobilization strategy and to describe how the city of Sebastopol sets its priorities or identifies actions related to that. So I think in the near term, certainly we want to continue working on the projects that we've identified and that each jurisdiction feels are priorities. And then as part of this call to action work, we do want to create a countywide view of what are those implementation priorities, specific projects like, Kevin mentioned the microgrid. So are there a series of microgrid projects that would make sense to include in this future funding measure? So it's like we need to do both. The urgency of taking action means that if our jurisdictions have staffing capacity and resources today, that we certainly would encourage moving forward on those projects, but then also realizing that we need to bring in additional funding to work on some of these really big issues like electrifying our existing buildings. So that's kind of a longer term effort that needs to be in place. So I think as long as we're coordinating and working together across the jurisdictions, and that's really RCPA's role, I don't think we can go wrong. We need to be working at this at a variety of different levels. So I don't know if that helps answer the question or if there's additional questions that you have, but.
Well, that's great. So then I can go back to the city and say, we need our own climate action plan. We can't wait for the county to come up with one that then we're going to implement.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add to that, Ty, that we certainly want to be working together to align the jurisdiction level plans with the mobilization strategy so that you don't start from scratch, that you really take the work that's been done both at the RCPA level as well as looking at Sebastopol's work and Petalimba's work, because we have some great examples to work from. So, all right, Shirley.
Thank you for all you presented today. I read something today that's very exciting, and it's a dream come true about Sonoma State creating a internship, and I'll put the link in the chat, with planning and groundwater. This was the brainchild of Tom Jacobson, who just retired from Sonoma State University, and he's created an internship with the Permit Sonoma and Sonoma Water. And all of you know that's been on our wish list forever of having those two talk to each other. So I'm going to put the link in there so you guys will have all the information. So we can maybe invite the intern when they get that developed in the near future to our group. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Shirley. I hadn't heard about that. Awesome. All right, Carrie.
Well, thank you very much. It was great to see the proposed new structure. I think it's awesome. And I really like the program focus areas and appreciate all the work to increase engagement from community members. Having the environmental justice program area is awesome. The three things I just wanted to note, and I know that going with after this SGC funding would support this, but prioritizing stipends for equity priority community member participation would be awesome, and making sure there's representation across all program areas, not just the environmental justice one. Also, what might be helpful to consider is offering some educational support or at least resources to community members around terminology, key concepts, just to help kind of the language can sometimes be a lot to understand. So some support resources could be helpful. And then I'm sure this has been thought through, but as we break into topic areas, consideration of how the communication will flow between those in terms of the top priorities. But I really love the structure and appreciate all the thought that went into reorganizing that. So much gratitude.
Great, thank you, Carrie. And that's a great point in terms of the communication across the program committees as well as the environmental justice piece integrating across. So definitely appreciate that feedback. All right, any other questions? If not, Ross, we could probably open it for public comment if there's any members of the public that would like to comment.
All right. Drew, let us know if we have any public comment on this item.
I did not receive any pre-submitted public comment on this item, nor do I see any hands up right now.
Right.
All right. In that case, we will proceed to the report out from members by jurisdiction. And I will go ahead and start with, we'll just go down the list. We'll start with Cloverdale.
Thanks, Ross. I don't have a report out at this time.
Not a problem. Continuing to Katati.
Thanks. So yeah, here in Katati, we're one of the latest committees to pass the gas station ban, joining a lot of other cities in the county. And we also are looking at an ag ordinance that's in process, looking at Sacramento is one model in creating market garden land use permitting for small scale urban food production and sale. So I really appreciate that. Our city is looking at not just transportation, not just buildings, but the greater infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you, Judith. Moving on to Hillsburg.
Yeah, I can start, and then if Marilyn or Stephanie want to jump in, that'd be great. So as you can tell by my comments earlier about the actual plan, Healdsburg City Council did prioritize climate action as one of its top priorities. But the problem is that in the budget allocation process, there was no budget allocated. So that's presenting a little bit of a conundrum. We do have a new assistant city manager who was the finance manager. He's been promoted, but now he's doing both jobs until they fill his other job. And we're hoping that he's going to be overseeing climate across the departments, that there will be some cohesive look at that. Our all electric reach code is supposed to be back on the agenda August 1st, but we're not sure that that is going to fly. They probably will keep the reach code in a limited format. That's our prediction. But in spite of that, what I want to say is that there is a very lively coalition that has now organized in Healdsburg, and we're investigating a number of actions that citizens can take from the grassroots, kind of taking the lead from some of our other more active communities like Petaluma and Sebastopol. We've actually met with some of the people in Petaluma, and we're exploring taking the COPE groups that have formed up here and organizing our own sort of cool Healdsburg platform, even though we're not able to apply for any grant funding because we're too small. But these groups that have come together offer a wide range of possibilities. And there's also a group that's looking into some independent funding up here as well. And they've made some remarkable strides in the last couple of days, and I'm not able to inform anything about that. Stephanie, the new person that you met today, Stephanie is also very involved with a Google group that she's organized. And maybe you want to talk about your efforts for a second, Stephanie.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, like as Ty mentioned, everything feels very grassroots up here in Healdsburg. So I started a group of citizens, we're called We Are Talking About It, and basically just started talking about climate change and what we could do. And then within our group, we have lots of people in the wine industry or in the farming world, ag world, as well as just all retired people, all sorts of industries. So we have different interests. One of the things that we're trying to raise awareness of is reducing the use of single-use plastic, specifically at our farmers market, our beloved Saturday farmers market. So we have been able to have a table every month there talking about different ways that people can use alternatives to plastic. We're talking to the farmers themselves and helping them source some alternatives, and to the shoppers And it's just been really great to have that face-to-face every month. And we're also working on some transportation advocacy within our town, some more safer corners, intersections, bike, I don't know what you call that when the bike light changes for you, but those things. And also some really cool project in the wine industry, which is potentially using a reusable, refillable wine bottle that we're gonna, one of our members is gonna be piloting in Dry Creek Valley. So that will be really cool to share when that starts. So basically we're just trying to move on things that have been really hard to get the city, our city to council level to move on. So connecting with Ty and Marilyn and other people in Healdsburg and with you all today, it's been, it's just, we're just talking about it. So we'll keep doing that.
Thank you, Stephanie. Marilyn, did you have
The only thing that I can add is if you want to pick up the Sonoma County Gazette and look at the Healdsburg column, we have the story about the recycled glass bottles, and the pilot program is wine bottles. And so that might be of interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for those of you that are interested, just Google conscious container and you'll get a little bit of an idea of what it is that we're talking about. So.
Excellent. Next, we'll move to Petaluma.
Yes, I would say the most, well, Petaluma is of course trying to live up to our reputation and moving on all these climate actions, but the one really exciting area, particularly because now we've entered summer, is we have our Safe Streets Coalition, which is a grassroots thing. It was actually started by Pete Gang. And we have our First Fridays at 5, which was started by our council member, Delinda Fisher. And both of these actions are creating group safe opportunities for people to be on a bike. And so we're trying to get people engaged in thinking about using a bike as an alternative form of transportation, making them comfortable riding in a group, pointing out the safest ways for them to get around town where they won't engage with traffic quite so much. And it's been very successful. This last Friday, we had over 35 people on the ride, and it's riders of all capabilities. We've got electric bikes in there. We've got beater bikes in there. We've got just everything. And it's not, you don't have to be an accomplished rider, and it's been quite successful. And through that, we hope to establish a bike grid that will connect people to the places that they need and want to go. So like our parks, shopping, transportation. So it's our version of the school, the bike and roll, but this is our version of that, and it's quite successful. And any town that wants to know more about it, we were contacted by the Sonoma County Bike Coalition, and they've given some workshops for us. So it's a really it's a good way to connect people with alternative transportation in a safe way and move us closer towards reducing traffic on our streets. That's all I have to report.
I'd love to get your notes, Beverly, for how we can do something like that too. So maybe we can connect after.
Okay.
Thank you, Beverly. Moving on to Rohnert Park.
Okay, so our roundabout on Southwest was finished. Yay! It's pretty cool. I went through it a couple of times. And Rohnert Park has decided to purchase the Smart Station City Center. So it's went back to the city of Rohnert Park. So it's really exciting about how we're going to incorporate, pedestrian and, public transportation to go to that center because the smart station's right there. So we're going to incorporate all of that into the smart station. So that's exciting. And the thing that I'm concerned about, though, is right there at Expressway and State Farm. I was going to the city center for their farmers market on Friday, and I'm in a wheelchair, and the gal that I was with is from the senior housing right there by Rayleigh's. And we started to use the crosswalk, and it's one of those lights that has the stop and go, the go and then stop. Well, right when you step in there, it says stop. I mean, it almost reminds me of the Frankie and Grace, with Lily Tomlin when she was trying to get across the boulevard and kept telling her to stop and turn. They all started picketing it. So I'm going to go to the BPAC, that's our Bicycle Pedestrian Action Committee and Advisory Committee, and let them know that I think we could have a better pedestrian light than that. I like the one over here on the west side of 101 that goes across Expressway. That gives you a time, it's the time thing. You get into it, you got like 15 seconds to get across or whatever. So that's my little gripe session. Other than that, it all looks good here in Winter Park.
Thank you, Shirley. And then Santa Rosa is next.
Yeah, the only thing I know about Santa Rosa that at least is of interest to me is the e-scooter pilot program that will be starting soon, I guess. And I'm very curious to see how that will work, mainly because of my concern about safe streets. I have some fear myself about getting on my bike and riding around our town because it doesn't feel safe. But I'm glad they're moving in a direction for the last stop effort with these e-scooters, and I'll be anxious to see how that year-long program plays out. So that's all I have to report.
The Planning Commission will hear a ordinance on no gas stations at its next meeting. We haven't seen it yet, but there's some movement.
Thank you, Kevin and Steve. And yeah, I believe some of our staff has tested out one of the bird scooters successfully. I'll get up the nerve to do it myself soon. And then moving on to Sebastopol.
Yeah, so we have a climate committee of the city, and I'm on the transportation subgroup of that committee. So that's what I know most about. But I will also refer a bit to other things that the commission had dealt with. So we did get a request of the bird company to start a pilot program or some other contract with birds. And the transportation group of the commission evaluated that, and we came kind of to the conclusion that we don't want to have e-scooters at this moment in town. So we are working with them just for the e-bike part. And I think the project in Santa Rosa started like 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of public comment and a bit of complaint about this new way of going around. Especially how people leave them on the sidewalk and that kind of thing. So I'm kind of happy that we're trying to control it a little bit more in Sebastopol. So we're working on a program with Bird, but it's only for the e-bike, not the smaller e-scooters. And then we also working on the REACH code. It's a highly technical thing, so I'm not really. Maybe if Woody is there and he can say something about this, but one of the surprising things that the people that digged into this and discovered was that we had regulations in Sebastopol in zoning and such thing that we could not enforce because we didn't go to the right loops with the state around these things. So if you are on in a setting in your city, that's maybe something you want to look at. Are these things that look good? Are they enforceable or not? But we are working on the REACH code, and it's still in commission, and it's probably going to leave the commission within the next month or so and go to City Council. Then also we do, as Tanya explored this already in her remarks, Sebastopol has a framework developed through the commission and through Phoebe, and that's going to be discussed in the City Council very soon. So we're working on, as again, a framework for action on the local level in Sebastopol. And I think there's a link in the chat where you can see how we have conceived of that. Our zero waste group was folded into the Climate Commission. I think the main reason was that well, two reasons. One, it is connected, and these things are connected with climate. But also Sebastopol is a very small town with very little staff. And it became a little burdensome to have staff dedicated to two different commissions. So by folding them in, we're saving some of staff time that they can dedicate to other things. And then the last thing I want to mention is the bicycle plan update. So the county is working on the bicycle master plan updates. I think they're called active transportation. And Sebastopol not having a bicycle commission is kind of piggybacking on that plan. And if anybody here knows a little bit more about the timeline and how Sebastopol can be involved in its own part in that plan, I would be grateful. We have a Bike Sebastopol group that is somewhat similar to the Bike Santa Rosa group that is took it on itself to start evaluating what we have. And it has not been updated, I think, for like 8 or 10 years. So if anybody has something to say about that process and how to be effective as a citizen group like Sebastopol, that would be very welcome. Thanks.
Tanya.
Yeah, Ross, I just wanted to respond to Zeno's question. So the SCTA, as we may have shared with this group in the past, was successful in its grant application for the Sustainable Communities Program to provide funding for the development of this countywide active transportation plan. And so SCTA staff have been working on kind of the logistical parts of this around creating the budget and doing some of the background work. And I think their intention and goal is to launch the project this fall. And so Zeno, that would be the time where there'd be more information shared about kind of the overall plan for the project, and staff would be connecting in with each of the jurisdictions that has expressed interest in participating in the program. So I would say stay tuned for more information, hopefully coming soon, but definitely by this fall.
Thank you, Tanya. And then continuing on to we have Sonoma next.
Hi, this is David. We reported at the last CAAC meeting that we're still struggling with a lot of dysfunction in the city of Sonoma, with a massive turnover in the city council members, and the decision to reorganize the joint committee and move responsibility for climate action that had been with the Community Services and Environment Commission into a separate group. But that group is not having any regular meetings, so very little to report on that front. The city has successfully implemented an action that's consistent with the overall goals that we identified in the greenhouse gas inventory that we did for city operations, which was to replace all of the lighting with LED lighting with an estimated savings of something like 50,000 kilowatt hours a year. So that's a good step, but I think we'd still like to see more at the community level and more policy commitments, and we're still waiting for that.
Thank you, David. And then continuing to the town of Windsor.
Greetings, Christopher Peck from Town of Windsor. Great to see everybody. I have several things. One, I wanted to celebrate. We almost have our next roundabout about completed. It's at Windsor Road and Windsor River Road, just southwest of the town green and right next to where hopefully soon we will have the SMART train coming right into town. That'll be great. Our big news since the last time I reported is that the town of Windsor has hired a sustainability coordinator. We lost Paul. I think it's been like a year and a half or maybe longer, but we now have a new half-time sustainability coordinator, Catherine Gabor. She's great. Michelle and I, the other Windsor rep, met with her. It's probably been like a month or 6 weeks ago. And she completed in mid-May a really nice sustainability action status report for the town of Windsor, basically compiling all those different things that are kind of in 12 different places throughout the town, what's happening in community groups, and putting it all in one place with this is what people would like to do. This is, some of the stuff that's been completed, like our very impressive solar system that's out on the wastewater lagoon, and the things that are ongoing, including like pestering the rest of the town to get onto Evergreen. We've only got about half. I think it's about, maybe it's less than half. It's, estimated another 80 to 160K for the town to get the rest of the buildings onto Evergreen. So we're going to keep pestering on that. But a lot of other things happening, and it's just very gratifying to have we're having somebody who's on staff now 20 hours a week or so. It's great. So very pleased about that. I wanted to comment about the bird scooters because I'm not sure if that comment got made in last thing I had to run in the April meeting, but we just started ours. I think I rode the first time in April, and I have a 9-year-old son. He loves this thing. Every time we are going by one, he wants to ride. So I've probably ridden it at least a dozen times. Of course, it's not legal for a 9-year-old to ride one of those bikes, so don't mention this to anybody else outside of this room. And I would just want to urge those of us who are in a different age categorization how much fun it is to ride these things. It's very easy. It's very fast, and they're not even that fast, like 15 miles an hour max. And the cool thing is that they can be restricted. So like you can't really ride it inside the town green. The Windsor Senior Center is exempted as well. So, and also around the town green, we figured this out. You can ride around it where the cars ride, but you can only ride so fast. So it controls your throttle and slows you down. The big question, of course, is how, I think the big worry is always littering streets, etc. I have not seen that happening here. It's very different than downtown San Francisco, where there might be a few, 10,000 of these little scooters and a whole lot more people. Here in Windsor, we don't have that many pedestrians. And so even if a scooter is on the sidewalk, it's not really an issue. And I have not seen one knocked over or put in an awkward place or anything like that. When you have started a ride on your phone, in order to close out the ride, you have to take a picture of where you left the thing. So I think that's a very good little tweak they've made to help assist people to be responsible about where they're parking. But the ease of riding them is really tremendous, and I highly recommend it. The biggest question for me is is this actually going to affect vehicle miles traveled in the town of Windsor? Because we have only ridden it for fun. So on something like 4th of July, when that would be a time when riding a scooter would really be helpful because it's so crowded and people are driving and there's a lot of idling cars on the exits, leaving, etc. You could ride the scooter there, but you don't have any guarantee that a scooter will be there for you when you want to ride back home. And with a kid and it's 10:30 at night, that's a limiter. So I will say that I think the biggest result of that has been encouraging, at least this is the conversation in my household, why don't we own some electric scooters so we could zip around town in these things and not have to hopefully maybe get one and have it there when we come back. So I just want to, my main point is like, try to be open to the possibility of these because they are super fun and cool. And I don't know if these pilot programs are actually going to assist in VMT reduction. But the last thing I wanted to put out is this is an ongoing theme I've had for years, is my ongoing DIY electrification. We are now down to all we have left is our home cooking. We have an electric oven, but the stovetop is gas. And it is very challenging to convert old electrical panels to run your whole house on electric. And I'm saying this as someone who's like literally changing out circuits one by one and trying to figure out, could I get one more in there? I don't think I could really do this electric car, but maybe a 15 amp circuit I could. So if anyone has suggestions on how to overcome, or anyone is thinking about how to assist the county and the world in making that what seems to me like it's like this not very talked about bump, which is not really a bump, it's a wall towards electrification of the existing building stock. I would love to know about it because it's hard. All right, that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Christopher. And Zeno.
Yeah, I just want to kind of respond to Christopher. So we did get the electric stove, and I love it. It certainly has improved air quality in the house. We haven't done some of the other things like the heat pump, but there is so if you, I don't know whether you ever have done some of the seminars with PG&E, and they have a program about the watt diet. And watt diet means that you try to stay within your 100 amp panel, but completely electrify your house. So there are all kinds of ways in which you can do that, and there are some very interesting discussions of that in these seminars. And I will put a link in the chat to another company that has developed methodology for this kind of complete electrification of your house.
Thank you, Zeno. I see a hand from Tyra.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Christopher, is that report that your sustainability expert, the action report, is that public?
I believe it is public. I was looking for the link while we were talking before, assuming that I would get that question. But I wasn't able to track back in my email. Catherine had just emailed it to me, but I believe it is publicly available on the Town of Windsor website, but I wasn't able to quickly track it down. I apologize for that. And so I think it's, if you want to, send me your email, I'd be happy to send it to anybody. It's like, it's a nice, it's like 40 pages or something. Say no, thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Christopher. Continuing on, County of Sonoma District 1. I don't believe we have anyone from there today. County of Sonoma District 2. I can see Jake, and County of Sonoma District 5. Carrie?
Yes, so I have an update on a program that was run actually in Petaluma last year called the Petaluma Equitable Climate Action Coalition, which is focused on increasing representation and community engagement on developing local climate policy and giving input into climate planning processes. I'm really excited to report that the city of Petaluma has agreed to fund continuing and replicating that program to advance the recommendations that were presented last September. We've decided to focus on active transportation and transportation equity. So we are really excited to be kind of gearing up to launch that program again with the hopes of influencing the active transportation plan. But our priority is making sure we have more representation in the process. And part of our core model is to offer educational and training, again, kind of per my comment earlier around key concepts and terminology to be able to engage in this work, and then also an $1,800 stipend per participant for their 6-month commitment to this program. So we're really excited to be launching that again. That's kind of my main effort. All of these bike ride updates have made me want to give a little shout out to Santa Rosa, because I've been hearing a lot of buzz around their Taco Tuesday rides. It almost makes me want to drive to Santa Rosa just to go biking, which I haven't done, but totally love that. And also assume this is on the radar, but I did just learn about the Department of Transportation's Reconnecting Communities pilot grant application that is open to October. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the radar too. I heard a lot of the themes of connectivity, and it's really exciting to be getting more transportation funding to do those connectivity plans. So that is my update, and I'll hand it over to Julie.
Thanks, Carrie. So I just returned back to Sonoma County after a few months away. So I'm just reconnecting with some of the projects that I've been working on here. And like Carrie, I have a big interest in community engagement and equity around climate. And one of the areas that I've been looking into is really around youth engagement, internships. Looking at the Kashaya tribal rancheria out there on the coast, they have a youth leadership program that they're developing. So I'm hoping to tap a little bit more into that and learn more about that, and kind of see the parallels to like Pepperwood has an tribal advisory council. So I tend to jump from West County to broader county applications. And also in West County, there's a Sonoma Earth School that's celebrating its 1-year anniversary, launching its 2nd year, which focuses primarily, it's an independent school located on Yaka'ama land in Pomo land in Forestville area. And the Sonoma Earth School is really, again, geared towards teaching elementary school children around land use, land stewardship, and being good stewards of the earth and future leaders. Finally, looking at, it's actually in Marin County, it's SCI, it's an organization that works with, again, high school and college age students to promote leadership. So that's been primarily my focus. If anybody has any other connections that I might be able to make, I'm open to that. And hope to bring some of these future leaders back into, if you have opportunities for internships or opportunities for them to shadow and observe you, perhaps going to some council meetings or on any projects, I'd be happy to be a connector in that area. I just want to get some younger people involved in our solutions here. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Any other comments on the updates before we move on? Zeno.
Yeah, so there's also an event coming up in Petaluma that is organized by the city in working with the Bicycle Coalition, and I'm on the board, so I would like to highlight that event. It's a bicycle event. It's in Sunday in a week from now. And I put a link in the chat for people that want to learn more about this event.
All right. Thank you, Zeno. Moving on to RCPA update on activities. Is that you, BC?
Yes, I can give a brief update. I had a few slides prepared, but since we're actually short on time, I'll just make it an oral update and run through what I was planning to say. So I want to give updates on, I believe there's 4 or 5 items here that we are working on. First off, on our greenhouse gas inventory, community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. We are currently working on that and compiling the data and the calculations. Our initial deadline or our anticipated release of that report had been this month. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit behind schedule, and I am looking to have a draft done in early August for release at our September RCPA board meeting. So that is kind of the recent update, the most recent update on that. Working through on building energy calculations, transportation, solid waste, and this week working on off-road transportation. So a lot of data work and making sure all the numbers add up since this will be a fairly publicly high-profile public report for us. So kind of a brief update on that. And I'll go ahead and run through these and then hopefully take any questions that may come up. Second, I wanted to give an update on the work that we are doing around tree protection ordinances. We are working with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network and a graduate student researcher from the University of Colorado Boulder, who has been paired up with us to do a analysis, basically an initial survey and an analysis of all of the existing tree protection ordinances for each of the jurisdictions and the county of Sonoma. So I'm working with a young woman named Emily, and she is currently has surveyed all of the jurisdictions, gathered up all the information, and is currently working on a rather complicated matrix comparing all the different tree protection ordinances. And then we'll hopefully have a report out later on this summer with some recommendations for areas where each of the ordinances could be improved in the future, and looking for areas where there could be collaborative work between jurisdictions. This is something specifically that has come up from the city of Cotati, looking at the opportunities for, say, pooling mitigation funds that are collected when a tree is removed, and whether or not those could actually be pooled across the number of jurisdictions for a bigger bang. A lot of our work on this has really been inspired by the group in Petaluma, Relief Petaluma, and have been in close contact with them over the last few months, getting guidance. So that's where we're there on that project. Third, wanted to mention our work on all electric reach codes. This was mentioned by a couple of other presenters here. We've been working very closely through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network and with the county's Energy and Sustainability Division to compile information and make it available for any jurisdictions that would like to adopt an all-electric reach code in line with the building code change at the end of the year. Just this week, we learned of some recent kind of changes in the code, changes in the process, and so we're evaluating those right now and hoping to get an update back out. Which may actually, it may make things there's just been some changes with some direction from the California Energy Commission that we're trying to process through to make sure that we're giving the jurisdictions the right guidance, because the guidance we've been giving may be slightly askew now. So anyone who's interested in that all electric reach code work, please go ahead and contact me directly and we can connect people up with the correct resources. Finally, I want to give an update on the work we've been doing, providing support to local jurisdictions on banning gas stations or banning the construction of new fossil fuel gas stations. At this point, 3 jurisdictions have passed permanent bans, those being the city of Petaluma, city of Roanoke Park, city of Sebastopol. And then we are aware that the town of Windsor and the city of Cotati, and the city of Santa Rosa are all moving forward with their ordinances and are all heading to planning commission meetings soon. So, oh, that's right, Cotati is done. So actually Cotati, I'm not sure if that's been approved by the council yet. So at this point, there's been a lot of national and international press that this effort has been garnering. And so it's been, again, kind of a high-profile project and a lot of work. I have to give up kudos to the community group that we're working with, ConGas, who is really leading the efforts kind of behind the scenes. And then we're working with a lot of the jurisdictions one-on-one. So there's a number of other things that we're working on here. That was very quick, but that's kind of a snapshot of where we're at. So pass it back to Ross, and I'll see if there's any questions in the last minute or so.
Thank you, BC. Any questions regarding RCPA activities?
Just to clarify, I'm assuming so, but awesome about the trees. Is that unincorporated as well and in collaboration with Doug Bush at the permit department?
So yes, yes, but with an asterisk. Because the county itself is currently updating their tree ordinance, and that is in process. Since I'm working with a graduate student who has limited capacity, she is gathering that information, but I've really directed her to really focus on the ordinances at the city level, the jurisdiction level. And we are in conversation with Permit Sonoma around their tree ordinance. It is so complex, the level of complexity, that's one, at least for what I've asked the graduate student to look at. We have prioritized the smaller jurisdictions above that. So it's in the mix, but not to the full extent.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks for all that work. Great update.
All right, as we are nearing our time, do we have any last comments or announcements? Or public comments for that matter? Okay.
Oh, Ross, sorry. If I could just
Please
share one kind of follow up from the earlier discussion on the call to action, just to let the committee know that as soon as we have the structure finalized and approved and it's ready to launch, we'll definitely let the committee members know, because we really want to invite and encourage you, to the extent that you're available and interested, to be part of the program committee structure. So we'll definitely let you know when that's up and running and ready for you to get connected to that. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, if there are no last comments or announcements, I believe we will go. Zeno.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I wonder, in the climate mobilization development, how do civic organizations like the Bicycle Coalition that I mentioned before, how do they fit into the process?
Are you asking, Zeno, in terms of the new committee structure that we're proposing?
Well, when I look at the outline, I don't see necessarily them mentioned as organizations. So there's the government partners, the community members, but are these civic organizations that have a role to play in this this thinking this through?
Yeah, you know, Zeno, that's a great point. And I realize in thinking about the structure, I think our assumption is that yes, they would definitely be included, but since we haven't called that out specifically, so I'm going to take that as an item to follow up on with the committee. I think that's a great input. So thank you.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I think we will go ahead and adjourn for today. Thank you for all your time, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much for all your work.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.